Good afternoon, everybody. It's June 22nd, 2025. It's Sunday. I think it's Sunday. Yes, it's Sunday because we had the live stream last night, Saturday night. And thank you for everybody who joined in the live stream last night. I was 20 minutes late because I had technical difficulties. I had to reboot my laptop. And if anybody's heard from Con Artist, he's usually in the live chat, but he wasn't there last night. So if anybody knows where he is, if he's okay, let me know. I might actually email him to find out. But anyway, I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and I actually wanted to do like an expose on this a year ago. And of course, it's always something. My printer's not working, and the way I like to do research is I like to have all my papers around me. I like to highlight things and go from there. But I don't have that. My printer's not working. I'm kind of stuck with viewing things online. So I'm gonna kind of do this and just see how it goes. I wanted to talk about the mathematical professor John Forbes Nash. He was a Princeton professor back in the 50s. And his full name is John Forbes Nash Jr. He's born 1928 to 2015. He was a mathematician, a researcher, and he was a professor at Princeton University at MIT. He was famous for his revolutionary work in game theory, which earned him the 1994 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. He was a contributor to differential geometry and partial differential equations. His life inspired the movie and the book A Beautiful Mind, of which I saw both. Well, I should say I saw the movie, and I purchased the book, and I got somewhat through it. You know, books are very different than the film. But in listening to it and viewing it, I didn't view it from the perspective of a targeted person. And what I know to be true now, all these years later, about how the psychiatric profession is weaponized against brilliant people, people they want to study, people they want to experiment on, people they want to take out temporarily or permanently, people that they feel threatened about, maybe people that were researching things and getting a little too close for comfort. And I believe that's what happened with Professor John Nash. And this is not anything derogatory about what his family and the professions claim to be paranoid schizophrenia. I'm going to make the argument that that was a crock of BS. That John Forbes Nash was not paranoid schizophrenic. That Professor John Forbes Nash was being gang stalked. He's being surveilled by intel agencies to harass and stalk him and to cause delusions, to cause fear, to cause him to have a nervous breakdown. And of course, back then, who would he have to speak to about Stasi techniques in gang stalking? Nobody, except what he would tell his wife about what he was experiencing. And of course, with the limited knowledge that his wife had, and with the medical profession, the psychiatric profession, they labeled him paranoid schizophrenia, approximately at the age of 30. But I'm going to backtrack a little bit. With the help of ChatGPT and Wikipedia, I don't have the book available. I don't know where it is. You know, half of my books disappeared en route from New Jersey to Kentucky. But it really bothers me. It really disturbs me, especially how I know how the psychiatric profession falsifies, fabricates information about these highly intelligent people like this man, John Nash, because of an agenda, a fear. They wanted to take him out. And actually, what happened to him is absolutely horrific. But fortunately, he did win the Nobel Prize in 1994, in spite of what they did to him. I wonder how the controllers that were experimenting on him, I wonder what their notes look like. I wonder what they discovered about what they did to him, to this man, this innocent man. So let's back up a little bit, okay? So in the book A Beautiful Mind, chapter 34, let me, okay, we're going to fast forward here a second. All right, let me just back up. Let me back up here. Okay. He was born June 13, 1928. Makes him a Gemini. Known and published as John Nash, he was an American mathematician who made fundamental contributions to game theory, real algebraic geometry, differential geometry, and partial differential equations. Now, of course, most of us don't know what the hell that means. But as targeted people, I think we're a little bit more adept at understanding this game theory and hyper game theory and how it's being used against targeted people and many people across the world. So Nash and fellow game theorist were awarded the 1994 Nobel Prize in Economics. In 2015, Louis Nierenberg and he were awarded the Abel Prize for their contributions to the field of partial differential equations. He was a graduate student at Princeton University Department of Mathematics. He introduced a number of concepts, including the Nash Equilibrium and the Nash bargaining solution, which are now considered central to game theory and its applications in various sciences, like the targeted individual program. In 1950s, Nash discovered and proved that the Nash embedding theorems by solving systems of nonlinear partial differential equations arising in Riemannian geometry. This work, also introducing a preliminary form of Nash-Moser theorem, was later recognized by the American Mathematical Society with a Leroy P. Steele Prize for a seminal contribution to research. Blah, blah, blah. We'll pass through some of this because a lot of this is gibberish and I'm going to end up losing you guys, okay? Now, what they're saying here is that his theory on the smoothness of solutions and of such equations resolved Hilbert's 19th problem on the regularity of the calculus variations, which had been a well-known open problem for 60 years. So this man was finding phenomenal solutions to problems that people have been ruminating on for years. Now they're claiming that in 1959, Nash began showing clear signs of mental illness and spent several years at psychiatric hospitals being treated for schizophrenia. After 1970, his condition slowly improved, allowing him to return to academic work in the mid-1980s. His life was subject of the Sylvia Nasser's 1998 biographical book, A Beautiful Mind, and his struggles with his illness and his recovery became the basis for the film by Ron Howard, in which Nash was portrayed by Russell Crowe. And I will attest, and I will say that John Nash was not schizophrenic. He was born June 13, 1928 in Bluefield, West Virginia. Maybe he has a West Virginia horror story, too. His father, namesake John Forbes Nash Sr., was an electrical engineer for the Appalachian Electric Power Company. His mother, Margaret Virginia, had been a school teacher before she was married. He was baptized in the Episcopal Church, and he had a younger sister, Martha, born November 16, 1930, so it means she was a Scorpio. Nash attended kindergarten and public school, and he learned from books provided by his parents and grandparents. His parents pursued opportunities to supplement their son's education and arranged for him to take advanced mathematical courses at the nearby Bluefield College, now considered the Bluefield University, during his final year of high school. He actually attended the Carnegie Institute of Technology, which later became Carnegie Mellon University, through a full benefit of the George Westinghouse Scholarship, initially majoring in chemical engineering. He switched to chemistry major, just like Jessica Thomaston, and eventually, at the advice of his teacher, John Licton Synge, to mathematics. After graduating in 1948, he received his Bachelor of Science and his Master's in mathematics. He accepted a fellowship to Princeton University, great university, where he pursued further graduate studies in mathematics and sciences. Nash's advisor and former Carnegie professor Richard Duffin wrote a letter of recommendation for Nash's entrance to Princeton, stating that he is a mathematical genius. He was also accepted at Harvard University, along with the University of Chicago, the University of Michigan. However, the chairman of the mathematics department at Princeton offered him the John S. Kennedy Fellowship, convincing Nash that Princeton valued him more. Further, he considered Princeton more favorably because of its proximity to his family in Bluefield. And at Princeton, he began his work on equilibrium theory, later known as the Nash Equilibrium. He earned his PhD in 1950 with a 28-page dissertation on non-cooperative games. The thesis, written under the supervision of doctoral advisor Alfred Tucker, contained the definition of the properties of the Nash equilibrium, a crucial concept in non-cooperative games. A version of his thesis was published a year later in the Annals of Mathematics. In the 1950s, Nash carried out research on a number of related concepts in game theory, including the theory of cooperative games. For his work, Nash was one of the recipients of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences in 1994. In 1949, while still a graduate student, Nash found a new result in the mathematical field of real algebraic geometry. He announced his theorem is a contributed paper at the International Congress of Mathematicians in 1950, although he had not worked out the details of the proof. Nash's theorem was finalized in October 51, and he published his work in the Annals of Mathematics. It had actually been known since the 1930s that every closed, smooth manifold is diffeomorphic to the zero set of some collection of smooth functions on Euclidean space. I don't expect for you to understand this, but bear with me. In his work, Nash proved that those smooth functions can be taken to polynomials. This was widely regarded as a surprising result. So he is finding unique stuff that has been researched through and through and through, and he discovered these new phenomenon. This was widely regarded as a surprising result, since the class of smooth functions and smooth manifolds is usually far more flexible than the class of polynomials. Nash's proof introduced the concept known as Nash function and Nash manifold, which had been widely studied in real algebraic geometry. So we're going to fast forward here. Now, listening to what I just said, you know that the guy is a genius. His teacher said he's a genius. He's a mathematical, problem-solving genius. He understands strategic patterns, okay? He understands geometry. It's sort of like astrology is planetary geometry. You connect one planet to the next, to the next, to the next, and you get an algebraic equation. You get squares and triangles and rectangles and hexagons and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. The logic of Nash's work has been found to be useful in other contexts in mathematical analysis, starting with the work of blah, 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 blah. The ideas of Nash's proof were applied to various constructions of turbulent solutions in fluid mechanics. In the 1970s, Mikhail Gromov developed Nash's ideas into the general framework of convex integration, which has been, among other uses, applied by Stefan Mueller, Vladimir Zverek to construct counterexamples of generalized forms of Hilbert's 19th problem of the calculus variations. Okay, so Nash found the construction of smoothly differential isometric embeddings to be unexpectedly difficult. However, after a year and a half of intensive work, his efforts succeeded, thereby proving the second Nash embedding theorem. The ideas involved in proving the second theorem were largely separate from those used by proving the first. Nash's resolution of this issue, given the deforming of isometric embedding by an ordinary differential equation along which regularity is continually injected, is regarded as a fundamentally novel technique in mathematical analysis. And this paper was awarded the Leroy P. Steele Prize for seminal contribution to research in 1999, where his most original idea in the resolution of the loss of regularity issue was cited as one of the great achievements in mathematical analysis in this century. You must be a novice in analysis or a genius like Nash to believe anything like that could ever be true, or to have a single non-trivial application. So this man, and the reason I'm reading this is to understand the pure genius and innovative ideas this man possessed. Now, I'm going to pass through all of this stuff because it's just too much. Now, it says, well, let's talk about his alleged mental illness. His mental illness first began to manifest in the form of paranoia. His wife later described his behavior as erratic. Nash thought, here it comes, guys, the targeted people out there, get your ears perked up here. Nash thought that all men who wore red ties were part of a communist conspiracy against him. Men in red ties were following him around the Princeton campus, stalking him. Men wearing red ties. He ended up mailing letters to embassies in Washington, D.C., declaring that they were establishing a government, that these men in red ties. Nash's psychological issues crossed into his professional life when he gave the American Mathematical Society lecture at Columbia University in 1959. Originally intended to present proof of the Riemann hypothesis, the lecture, they claim, was incomprehensible. Colleagues in the audience immediately realized that something was wrong. In April 1959, Nash was admitted to McLean Hospital for 1 month. Based on his alleged paranoia, persecutory delusions, hallucinations, and increasing sociality, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. In 1961, he was admitted to the New Jersey State Hospital at Trenton. Horrible place to be. And over the next 9 years, he spent intervals of time in psychiatric hospitals where he received antipsychotic medications and insulin shock therapy. Although he sometimes took the prescribed medication, Nash later wrote that he did so only under pressure. According to Nash, the film Beautiful Mind inaccurately implied he was taking atypical antipsychotics. He attributed the depiction to the screenwriter, who was worried about the film encouraging people with mental illness to stop taking their medication. Nash did not take any medication after 1970, nor was he committed to the hospital ever again. Nash recovered gradually, and encouraged by his then former wife, Larde, Nash lived at home and spent his time in the Princeton mathematics department, where his eccentricities were accepted, even when his mental condition was poor. Larde credits his recovery to maintaining a quiet life with social support. Nash dated the start of what he termed mental disturbances to the early months of 1959 when his wife was pregnant. He described the process of change from scientific rationality of thinking into the delusional thinking characteristic of persons who are psychiatrically diagnosed as schizophrenic or paranoid schizophrenic. For Nash, this included seeing himself as a messenger or having a special function of some kind, of having supporters and opponents and hidden schemers, along with a feeling of being persecuted and searching for signs representing divine revelation. The guy was being gang stalked on the campus with men with red ties. During his psychotic phase, Nash also referred to himself in the third person as Johann von Nassau. Nash suggested that his delusional thinking was related to his unhappiness, his desire to be recognized, and his characteristic way of thinking, saying, "I wouldn't have had good scientific ideas if I had thought more normally." And this is what happens to brilliant people. And actually, I did a research paper on this a zillion years ago, that there is a fine line between brilliance and insanity. And sometimes you swing back and forth, because there are not many people who think like this man that he could relate to on the level that he thinks. And this is a problem. And it also becomes problematic when you're isolated and you're ruminating on these theories, which takes you on different tangents and stuff. And it literally takes you out of reality. I mean, just reading about the things that he theorized makes my head spin. My brain is totally fried, because I don't think that way. I don't think in mathematics. So imagine being him and thinking the way he does. And as a Gemini, of course, he's going to be ruminating over this over and over and over again. And then to be gang stalked on campus by men wearing red ties, coming after him. I don't know, guys. Leave a comment down below. Are you familiar with John Nash? So anyway, he spent times of the order of 5 to 8 months in hospitals in New Jersey, always on an involuntary basis and always attempting a legal argument for release. And it did happen that when I had been long enough hospitalized that I would finally renounce my delusional hypothesis and revert to thinking of myself as a human, of more conventional circumstances and returned to mathematical research. In these interludes of enforced rationality, I did succeed in doing some respectable mathematical research. Thus, there came the research for Le Problème de Cauchy. Forget me, I can't speak French. It's called the Nash blowing up transformation. And those of arc structure singularities, and the analyticity of solutions of implicit function problems with analytic data. Now, if you read what I just said a few times, you'll understand why that form of research could drive anybody nutso. I'm sorry. I still have a hard time wrapping my mind around it. Besides the fact that I just don't get math, I don't get it. It really takes me out of the realm of what I feel comfortable with. So after his return to the dreamlike delusional hypotheses in the late 60s, he says, I became a person of delusionally influenced thinking, but of relatively moderate behavior, and thus tended to avoid hospitalization and direct attention of psychiatrists. So he changed the way he thought. He changed what he discussed with other people, and thereby he got out of the attention of psychiatrists. So he stopped talking about being gang stalked by men in red ties. Okay? So, and as time passed, he gradually began to intellectually reject some of the delusionally influenced lines of thinking which had been characterized by his orientation. This began most recognizably with the rejection of politically oriented thinking as essentially a hopeless waste of intellectual effort. So, at the present time, he says, I seem to be thinking rationally again in the style that is characteristic of scientists. So basically what happened was, when he was being gang stalked by the men in red ties on the college campus, he started to believe that they were of the communist agenda, that people were actually out to get him, and likely they were, because they succeeded. They succeeded in driving him nuts. They succeeded in having him think about all of these possibilities. It totally derails him for more than a decade. And then when he began to reject what he considered to be politically motivated harassment, which he says essentially is a hopeless waste of intellectual effort, now he says, I'm thinking rationally again, in a style characteristic of scientists. And maybe that's what targeted people need to do. We need to reject that my favorite Bureau of Instigation has a watch list, even though they do. Maybe we should reject the fact that you stay on the watch list for the rest of your life, even when you die. Maybe we should stop thinking about these creatures and just get back to our regularly scheduled business. I don't know. Leave a comment down below. But let's see. I wanted to read something here. So what happened was, they were saying that Nash was on the brink of mental collapse. He began to exhibit stranger behavior in public. He became more paranoid and withdrawn. He was being stalked by men in red ties. He began ranting about people that he was encountering, sometimes actually about a paranoid conspiracy theory and about the government. His colleagues, though, took it as further evidence of the eccentricity for which he was already infamous. So now here you go. The guy is a brilliant genius, mathematical genius off the charts. He's already eccentric. Those personality traits, those intellectual abilities, were diagnosed as a psychiatric illness. To be medicated electroshock therapy to change his thought process, change the fact that he thought out of the box, change the fact that he was eccentric, change the fact that he invented all these theories that nobody else invented, that we're trying to figure out for 60 years, and then he found out. When they claim, imagine that men in red neckties were following her around the MIT campus, flashing secret signals at him. He believed that the men were a pattern of conspiracy against him. And when Nash began to write to other mathematicians to inform them that aliens from outer space were ruining his career, he got sent to the loony bin. So while some people consider that he was a quote-unquote a very sick man, other colleagues thought this was just further evidence that he was eccentric for what he was already infamous for. Leave a comment down below. John Forbes Nash. Was he schizophrenic? Was he being gang stalked? Was he brilliant mathematical professor? All of the above, none of the above? Leave a comment down below. This is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading, signing off for now.